So guys, I came across something really interesting, and I think it's worth sharing this with you guys because it's eye opening and kind of mind blowing on. Now it does make sense now now that you connect the dots, because it does make sense why you will hear on the news, and I mentioned this maybe on a couple of videos ago. It makes news why in the midst of this bear market, in the midst of the market selling off hard since the beginning of this year, you will hear on mainstream media, it doesn't matter whether it's CEOs, billionaires, fund managers, analysts, whatever, calling on retail to pretty much force them to capitulate, like to throw the towel and to say, you know what, I'm done, and sell everything. But no, things didn't happen this way. As a matter of fact, things totally changed, and that is something very interesting and definitely bullish for AMC stock and the other memes. Why? Because I'm reading from Market Watch here that the stock market turbulence may not be scaring off retail investors. We are not seeing investors respond the way they typically have. That was published today. And I jumped on it because I knew, there was something very interesting for people holding AMC stock and GameStop stock and all the other memes. Now, the thing is, people appear to be keeping the lessons from the pandemic-induced stock market drop, and a subsequent resurgence in 2020 at the front of their minds. We're not seeing investors respond the way they typically have, by selling off and eyeing the exits in response to recent downturns. And that's a good thing. The sentiment and behavior this year is much more consistent with the long perspective. Keep that in mind, long perspective. Now, what is really interesting is when you scroll down, despite the market being hardly selling off and at some point being, really depressing, stressing, and at some point discouraging, UP from putting money into the stock market, because, we'll have 10 straight red days. Like, in the midst of it, it is hard. It is hard. But retail investors have been averaging $768 million in daily purchases of stock and exchange-traded ETF funds, so ETFs, shares, according to a Wednesday note from Vanda Research. That's below a year-to-date daily purchase average of 1 billion, 0.2, and researchers noted. But they noted that there could likely be a seasonal summer lull in trading activity, not the sign of a white flag. Stock buying by one measure could still drop by another 8% and still sit within historical ranges without representing much cause for concern. The thing is, even if this rocky trading year, the 1.2 billion daily purchase average is so far exceeding the $1.1 billion that investors averaged last year. So last year we had stimulus checks. Last year we have a lot of people making a ton of money on crypto, a ton of money on real estate, a ton of money on side hustles, a ton of money online, a ton of money overall. But what is really surprising is this year, or year to date, so far this year, the amount of money that retail investors put in the market on a daily basis, when you total everything, it's higher. It's actually higher than last year, because last year everything was just going up like crazy. So it seems as if people are learning the lesson of what happened prior to 2020, which personally I think has to do a lot with people coming to the conclusion that, hey, we will not let Wall Street dictate again the way we invest, because we also have the tools, the means, and the resources to be smart, to be sophisticated, and to take calculated risk in the stock market. All right. Now, when it comes to the meme stocks, during the first quarter of 2021, which encompassed the meme stock frenzy surrounding companies like GameStop and AMC, retail investors had an average $1.32 billion in daily stocks and ETF purchases. Does that tell you something? This speaks volume, and it goes all the way back to when you pull the Fidelity buy ratio or buy to sell ratio. You will still see AMC purchases, AMC buys orders being significantly higher than sell orders. But why is the stock price not being reflected? Because we all know payment for order flow, dog pool being not regulated, not being having any type of oversight from the SEC. Which, by the way, I mean, don't even get me started on that with Nancy Pelosi thing. Now, This will also give you a pretty much indication on, you know, numbers and insights around this same situation. This is a retail investor's situation. You know, amid recent market sell-off, you have 65% of retail investors still holding stocks. You have 29% still buying more stocks, and you only have 6% that sold stocks. Because we do know that, you know, especially when it comes to AMC stock, GameStop, and pretty other stocks, is we've learned how to, you know, trade. We've learned how to analyze companies, not stocks, companies. We've learned how to analyze the market, and we've learned how not to get bullied anymore by Wall Street, the big guys with the big pockets on the street. And what is happening with meme stocks here is a perfect illustration. I think it doesn't have anything to do with kind of, you know, being against them or having a vendetta. No, it has to do with, hey, this time around, it's our turn to get paid, to eat and to secure the bag. So this is really, really, really encouraging and bullish, because it means that overall, but also specifically into AMC stock and GameStop, people are still buying heavily, holding heavily, because they know that this whole game started with a masquerade orchestrated by you know who, in order to scare us off these shares or companies that we like. You know, why there's no, you know, comments around people still buying Tesla like crazy, or buying the EVs, or buying, you know, all of these other stocks, the NEOs. Why is there suddenly, you know, a concern around people holding AMC stock and GameStop? Just because we like it, and we know that, you know, this time around we own the winning card. So it will take as long as it takes, and that's why personally, you know, I don't care how longer this drags on, but I do know that we haven't seen the best yet into AMC. I may be wrong, but I'm willing to lose it all because I'm paying the price of patience, if you see what I mean.